Hi, I'm Mark Sumner, CEO and founder of Robertson Sumner. Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast. Hello, I'm Mark Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have Georgie Lynch in the room.
Hello.
From Regional Sales Director from SAP Concur, Concur, for the new business team. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming in. So, before we get on to your current career, I heard, Dickie Bird told me that you actually founded your own company in the early 2000s, is that right?
Oh, yes,
So let's kick it off from there. So what made you do the brave decision of starting your own company?
Yeah, good question. So firstly, it's showing my age. I'm a lot younger than that. It was interesting. So I used to work for a teletext company. I don't know if people nowadays know what that means, but you obviously do, maybe being the same age as me, I reckon. Yeah. And we set up a company. We worked for a company and recognised that we all wanted to build. So four of us went off and set up. We put money in, which interestingly, I didn't come from a very rich background. So I got a farmer and my sister's ex-boyfriend to give me $7,500 each. So I had to raise 15 grand.
You got who to give it?
A farmer from a stables that I used to keep my horse at.
A farmer gave you £7,500?
Yeah. Well, I built in a contract to pay him back with interest.
Convincing.
So I already knew that my sales was my way forward. And my sister's ex-boyfriend, so I put in a business plan together for them. And they believed...
An ex-boyfriend as well gave you £7,500?
Yeah, well, he was a boyfriend at the time of my sister. Right. And basically, I put a business plan in and what I wanted to do, and they believed me. So I had 15 grand. We put in 15 grand each and set up what used to be called Imperial Holidays, teletext. So four of us did it. We did it for a year. It went really, really well. We had 22 staff. And then two of us split up and set up a company called Fast Track Holidays and Jetline, which is actually still going. And it grew to 75 staff. We had four offices from Swindon to Reading, basically doing teletext. But in those days, we didn't have to worry about basic salaries, which was awesome. So everyone got paid commission only. How did you attract those staff to get commission only? God, I know. I can't tell you, but it was we always seemed to have a full house. I don't ever, because we worked from 7 o'clock in the morning to 11 at night. So also, not only did you have to attract that team, you had to make sure you had the people for inbound calls and external. So I don't know if you remember things like daily bargains. So it used to be a teletext where it was rolling. So you go on teletext and it was the rolling page. So in a lot of investment on holidays like daily bargain, £99, and then our really good guys would like add stuff on and make loads of money. So yeah, but we had an amazing story, and I love seeing people now doing really well. Some people are still with Virgin now,
really?
And yeah.
How long did you do that for?
So I did that for 7 years from the whole travel agency, but then had family and stuff, so things changed.
Okay, so take me on after that. Obviously, working for yourself must have been quite sort of challenging in itself, working for, setting up your own company like that. So after that, what did you do? Yeah,
so for reasons that I won't go into, I then didn't have the travel agent anymore. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what do I do? Because I'd only done travel or drama. I went to drama college for 3 years. So I was like, oh my God, I have literally this much skill set, but I didn't want to go back into travel. I found it quite incestuous. So I decided to go to a company called Venture Portraits. I don't know if you know them. They're very, in the old days, very rich portraiture. So you sell on emotion. So you take pictures of captioning the family together, the laughter and all the things that actually really you don't do very well. So we capture those and sell them for like £1,100. I don't know if you remember. Well, I approached them and said, I really need a job kind of thing. So I started off in town stopping people. And then I'd get like £10 per sign up. And then they were like, would you be a studio manager? And I was like, yeah. So I turned on the studio from a 75 studio to the top 5 studio in like 8 months. It was amazing. But I loved it. I loved doing that. But the money was rubbish and the incentive was rubbish. So I went and worked at a company called Epicor, which is a full end-to-end ERP.
So how did you go from that into software sales? Because that's a massive jump.
I know. And it's a big risk as well, isn't it?
How did you even get the job? Because your CV was not made up for that role.
Maybe I'm just good at chatting. And also, historically, if you look at what I have done, I always think this as well, if you look at historically at success, that's what's built into somebody that breeds success and does it well. There's obviously a trait that they have. It wasn't a
success
fluke.
Breeds success.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, it was a risk. So I actually went in as a telesales person to Epicor. So So anyway, if you think of the people we recruit as telesales, you tend to be your first job anyway. So it came in. After 2 weeks, the vice president asked me if I would actually run the team, and then...
Sorry? After 2 weeks?
Because he recognised that I'd done leadership roles before, that I had the skills of a leader, and actually I was probably underselling myself in the job because I didn't go in as a high level, but I went as a level entry.
What made you take a telesales role after you've done leadership for that many years?
Because I hadn't done software sales before or any kind of technology sales, and you have to start at the beginning.
Yeah, and what motivated you to go into software? What was the reason you went into it?
I just got offered the job. I don't have a motivational reason, honestly.
Really?
There was no, I want to do this. I mean, look, I want to be an actress. So there was no, I want to be a technology.
So you just sort of stumbled into it and then started a career. So after 2 weeks, you've obviously done the telesales role. The leaders come up to you and said, I want you to run the team.
Yeah.
How did the team take that?
Well, we were all quite new because it was a new UK office, right. So they were both very, very new actually. So I was like, okay, brilliant. So I used my skills of leadership role, which is fantastic. One of them was a little bit weird about it, a bit jealous, but actually ended up going on amazingly well. But one thing it then transpired, because we were doing really well, the results were coming in, which is exactly what you wanted, is I then got asked to look after EMEA, so the whole of EMEA. And report to the US. Now, the exciting bit about that is we had pockets of teams around the whole world that clearly were not producing any results. So I went and closed every single hub, and then just hubbed Bratislava and UK. So multilingual. So went out and did interviews. So we had multilingual pods within the UK, within Bratislava. That was fantastic. I spent 4 years, built that up to about 38 reports into myself. But then decided that sales actually was the path I wanted to go down to.
So you started obviously into a sales role, but then you moved into that role, which wasn't sales at all then, was it?
Yeah, so no, again, so it was a telesales, the telemarketing team, so kind of our MDR world that we would see today.
Right.
So they were calling into new business and generating 100% pipeline for the sales reps on the floor.
Okay, and Epical, how long did you stay there for?
4 and a bit years.
Okay, so fantastic experience there as well.
Yeah.
What do you think gives someone an opportunity to go and manage a team like that? How do you get recognised? Because for 2 weeks, someone coming up to you, obviously you had your CV before, but you've obviously been recognised throughout your career doing that. So how do you get recognised when you're actually in the job?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's about being bold as well. So using your initiative and not being a pitch. So if somebody's looking for results, and for example, I'm to do 100 calls a day, but what else can I do? What else can I add value? Can I add any insight? Can I do something different that's outside the box that can? And I think that's the kind of entrepreneurial bit that comes out of me anyway. I do naturally like to motivate, regardless. Even in my personal life, I'm the person that kind of let's go and do fun stuff. So I really love seeing people do really well, regardless of whether they're my peers or above or below me. So I think I have a natural ability to motivate, and I generally do love it.
Okay, after Epical, then where'd you go?
So then I was like, this is a bit of an adult job. I really wanted to go into sales, but I don't know if you know much about the ERP salesmen, but they're, without being stereotypical, they're very mature men and women, predominantly men. And I was like, there's no way I can do this job. It's full end to end. I haven't got a clue how to sell that. So Concur actually headhunted me. Went for a couple of interviews. I think I might have mentioned it. They called out I would be a risk, because I had not sold software before. But for me, I saw it as a bigger risk, because actually I was stepping down from being a director on a way bigger salary, but I knew that I had to start again. Luckily, I wasn't 100 at that point, so my age wasn't against me at that point, but I knew that I'd have to go into software sales, and I really liked the sound of Concur, so that's the reason.
What made you take the drop from being a director and then go into that role like that?
I just knew I had to do it.
Why?
Absolutely, because to go into software sales, I'd have to start at the beginning. I'd have to be on the board, I'd have to be an individual contributor, I'd have to be a bag carrier, and actually the bigger picture isn't about the base salary. I was looking at the OTE. And I think that's important to look at that.
And the role you went into was a bag carrier?
Yeah, completely brand new business. So it was quite scary.
It must be tough. Obviously, you've done a lot of leadership roles before. Then what made you sort of... do you target software to go into? Why go into a bag carrier?
Actually, they headhunted me from the good old LinkedIn days. And I just ended up... I got on really well with a recruiter that was there at the time. And I thought, I just did a couple of interviews. It was around the corner from where I lived, another bonus. And I thought, well, I've been beginning and again, like Venture there, Epicor there, my own company. If it doesn't work, I can always move to something else.
Right. Okay.
Resilient, I think, is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. So let's talk about your career to date at Concur, because obviously you've had a lot of success and you've had, I think, is it 4 promotions? Is that right?
Yes.
4 promotions. So you started in as a individual contributor.
Yes.
Tell me about that role.
Yep. So when I started, it was very much a new business, new startup business. So 8 years ago, there was only 5 of us in mid-market, which meant we looked after zero people, employees, 1 to 1,000. So we had quite a big patch. We had to do all of our cold calling because we had a team in Prague that at that point hadn't been established. So we had to strip them out. I remember we probably didn't have any MDRs for about 6 months. So it was a full-on hunter role. It was hard, but hey.
How were you finding your leads and stuff like that?
Calling, but those were
literally cold calling.
Yeah, those were the days pre GDPR.
Really?
So you could email and call, and one thing I think that let me down a little bit initially was I wasn't very good at our CRM system at that point. So that probably was the only thing that held me back then. But just literally, we were told you have to do 100 calls every other day. That was what you did, so that's what you do. And, to build your funnel, you have to build your pipeline. And I really knew I wanted to be successful. So just worked hard, really.
And so how long did you do that role for?
Well, I did that role for 3 years. And then I stepped into BD, business development for partners. We didn't have an established partner role in the UK at that point. I did that for a year. I won't lie, I didn't like it.
Why?
Just didn't. There was no... when a contract comes in, or when you go and meet, I love meeting people, or going out and selling the value of why you should buy and how I can fix it. There wasn't that. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. I like meeting people, but it was just coffee and relationships. And hey, don't get me wrong, but I've got that outside of work, right?
No. So after that, what was the next role after you didn't like that BD?
Yeah, so I came back in as a senior RSC, so I had to go back as an individual contributor. Which I was fine with. My patch was a lot smaller. So now, as it's developed, we have a nationals team, which is 500 to 1,000. We've got a small business team, which is very, as you can imagine, it would be was just a 0 to 99. So now I'm focused on 100 to 499. My postcodes are smaller, and I'm like, my number's bigger. Everything you see in sales, but you know what the beauty is that we were growing. We have an MDR team, so we had a really good telesales team that I worked really closely, made sure that they are the success of us too. So to make sure that I worked really closely with my sort of pipeline generator, and between us we just generated 3 times our pipe. I mean, it's hard, don't get me wrong, and you need those big deals, but I loved it. I love it.
What advice would you give someone if they're going into they've been into a leadership role like you, but then they're having to go into an individual contributor role? If they want to be successful, what's the best sort of tips you could give someone?
Yeah. So the best tips is be the MD of your own business. Like, you cannot put the blame on anybody else, and don't do things if it's not working. Have a look at yourself and be okay to self-diagnose. So I always think self-diagnose early. So for example, I have a team sheet which literally is like a gap analysis to recognize holes early in yourself and in the deals, but be open-minded as well. So if you keep doing the same things and it ain't working, guess what? But it's okay to ask advice. So what if you've been a leader before? It doesn't matter, but be the MD of that territory. Because I always say to my guys, if you are going bankrupt, would you say to everyone else, "Oh, can you do it all for me?" Would you step in and pick it up? So that's exactly like I tell my guys, it's your business. If you don't want to do the calls, you won't get to your number. So it's exactly the same with anything, right?
Yeah. So when you've got, obviously now you're in a leadership role again.
Yeah.
How many people have you got working for you?
5.
5, okay. And with that, what's the most difficult thing now managing people again with those 5?
Motivation for building pipeline. I think pipeline, the P word, is actually really difficult to and actually, I don't know if you find this, Mark, but salespeople are really rubbish at time management.
Yeah.
They're always too busy, which is amazing. So managing a time management for people individually. So we're lucky enough to have internal courses that I put them on, but also building that pipeline. There was, I'm so busy, I can't pick up the phone. You're like, but you won't do your number. And so allowing them to take ownership. So I'm a very different manager to some of the others because I put the ownership on them.
How would you describe your management style then?
I'd like to say that I'm a coach more than a leader. I think coaching is, I definitely think that if I was to go to battle, my guys would come with me. Like, I'll give you a good example. Last year, they were like, come on, let's see how we can get G to club as well. Which is nice because I was carrying 4 on a 5 number, so we were short nearly half the year. But it's about making sure that you work together. Like, I have their back. I filter them from anything they don't need to know about. Like, if there's stuff that's going on that they don't need to know, I'll remove it for them so they can just get on with their job and remove barriers that definitely don't need to be. I also think I pride myself in understanding why my team come to work. Everybody is motivated differently, and nobody is motivated by money. Nobody. Everyone say, why are you motivated by money? No, it's not money. What do you want to get with the money? I want to buy a house. I want to buy 5 houses. I want to get married. That is the why behind when somebody gets to work. Why have you come here? Because I really want to earn money, because I want to earn do you know what we get a lot? I want 100 grand by the time I'm 30. Brilliant. But this is what you need to do to get there. So understanding why is definitely the art to knowing how to guide them forward.
And when you're interviewing people for your own team, what are the sort of traits you're looking for? Obviously, you've been an individual contributor yourself. You've been now a leader yourself. What do you actually look for when you're actually hiring for your own team? Yeah,
so if I was to look at it from a CV perspective, value sales is very important. It's very hard to sell value, and it's very difficult to lead with insight. So that person has to be able to not only build rapport, but understand why a business wants to buy, be able to articulate that. I have to be able to know that I'm going to get on with that person as well. I'm a really laid back individual when you're doing the right things, as you can imagine, if it's going right. But that person, and I'll tell you what traits I've noticed. A lot of people that have been really successful have done some kind of sport of some sort, like a team sport from either a young age, or they do, like, there's something behind them, like one of my guys.
Do you look for that on CVs?
Yeah, I do actually. Is that wrong?
No. I think a lot of people do that. I think, when we recruit for companies, they often say to us, we're looking for, have there been team events, rugby, cricket, or football, or netball, or whatever it is. They want either team events, but they've actually been in the collaborative sport, or they've been the captain of that team, or something like that. They're going into leadership. So I think it's pretty relevant. I think
it reflects on discipline. So and I know you know this, but I've had a horse since I was 11, all funded by myself. From when I was sort of 16, I used to share. Now, I used to have to get up at 5 o'clock every morning and muck out 2 horses before work for forever, until about 4 years ago, and I'm now on livery. But that discipline and hard work and things like that is built in myself anyway. So I think naturally having that want to do something.
Do you think when you're interviewing people that you can assess that work ethic?
I think that's a hard one. I'd love to say yes. And
do you look for it when you interview people?
I listen to what people say more than what they say, if you know what I mean. So some people can tell you exactly what they think you want to hear.
Yeah.
But I'm really, when I interview, I try not to look at the CV as well, so I can make up my own assumption, because a CV can be written by a professional writer, right? But actually, what they say, and another key point is when they don't know their numbers. Like, they've been really good at sales, and you ask them about the numbers, and they get stumbly on their numbers, and you're like, yeah, you kind of lost me at that as well.
When you interview people, do you always assess their numbers when you're interviewing?
It's important, right? So one thing that we always taught is that your past success will be your future. So if they've previously been very good, guess what? But if they're like, we never do hypothetical. I never talk about if hypothetically. It's always real time. So give me an example when you was really struggling. What did you do to get out of it? Scenario versus imagine if this was, because it's hypothetical and they know the answer, don't they?
Yeah. What would you say is the best sort of interview process that you're part of? We talked earlier about, it could be speed dating interviews, it could be assessment days, it could be competency based interviews, it could be just a chit chat.
Yeah.
What's the best ones that's been successful for you?
Yeah, so I definitely think chit chat is the first thing. I mean, I think you definitely get to know someone. I want to know about them. I love knowing about people. Like, that's the best part about sales. And then if I love knowing about them bit, I'll bring them in for a panel, and that's when it's a bit more formal. But guess which bit I'm really interested in? The about me bit.
Really?
I love it. Like, and actually that's when you get to see someone's personality, when they're telling you about their children, or they love traveling, or, they've just got engaged and they were rugby, and that's when you really see that person come out, because they're not in interview mode.
Yeah.
I love it, because I'm like, yes, that's the person I can see in my team.
Would you say you would go on personality a lot when you interview people?
I do.
Because you've obviously got a strong personality yourself.
Yeah.
Would you look for like similar traits in yourself when you interview people?
Yeah, because I think we have a fantastic product. I'm obviously not plugging it, but we do. So I think the product bit we can train, but having a rapport building and a personality that comes naturally, right? You can't train somebody to be friendly, personable, and don't forget, our first 5-10 minutes talking to a prospect, your personality has to come across.
So when you're looking with your own team, what do you think makes the difference between a good salesman and a great salesman? What are they things that they're doing differently?
Organisation, 100%.
Really?
Yeah. They have to be organised, and they also need to ask the difficult questions early. So when I say difficult question, it isn't a difficult question. Asking for the business early. If I can do this, this and this, commitment, control of the deal, would you be able to get signed by this date?
The great ones do that.
Yeah. The control of a deal and organisation. And when I mean organisation within their CRM, understanding. So if I'm like, hey, what's going on with this deal? You've got it coming in for February. What's got to happen? Yep, this and this. It's all diarised. Exactly that.
Once you've got that great person, that great performer, what steps do you think is good for if companies wanted a bit of advice to actually retain these people? Because at the moment, everyone's headhunting everyone. Talent shortages in the market. No good candidates in the market at all. So what's the steps you do to retain your own sort of talented staff?
Yeah, and it's a really interesting point, because for me, I think the most important thing is that regular communication is retention. So if you're going to have one-to-ones, make sure you have them. Don't just not have it because you think, oh, they've been with us a long time. In fact, the ones that have been with the most tenured are the ones who are more likely to lose. So make sure you get why they're still coming to work. Don't lose focus of why. Their why from 2 years ago is very different. If they want to go into leadership role, find out what that path is and guide them and help them. So I've got a couple that wanted to go into leadership roles. We're so lucky to have like a catalyst program. You can get a mentor program. So if that's what they want to do, make sure I facilitate that for them, because the job's still the same job, and I get that people get bored with that. And unfortunately, I can never meet somebody else's salary. So if they're chasing a big number, I can't do anything about that either, unfortunately.
Anything else in terms of trying to fixing the culture in your own business and stuff like that? What else do you sort of do to sort of retain staff? One-to-one's great, I get that.
Yeah,
do you think there's stuff that can be done on a sort of company-wide basis as well?
Yeah, so we do. So one thing we do. I don't know if you do corporate care days where we do things for charity. We get a day off a quarter to do it. I do it religiously. But this year I've put in a place where we do it as a team for 2 reasons. One, it's a great team building outside of the office. We don't have to think about your number for 5 minutes. And 2, we're giving something back to our charity. We've got a really good banter. It's professional, but there's a really good banter within. They go to football every Friday, clearly showing that I've got a male-orientated team here. We always make sure that we do lunch and make sure that actually work is super important, but work-life balance is really important. So, if somebody's got to get to their child's nativity play, being flexible, guess what it pays such a difference to give people time back.
That was the number one, I think, am I right, Natasha? The number one benefit people wanted, flexibility in the workplace.
So important.
In our Battle for the Benefits white paper, it's unbelievable. Everyone wants flexibility.
We should go down to a 4-day week. If I was the president, I would do a 4-day week, but I'm not the president. So
currently, what do you love about your current role and your current company? What's so good about it?
Yeah, I love the team. I love so obviously I've mentioned before we are Concur, we are now SAP Concur, but our culture has very much stayed as the Concur family. It's got the most amazing kind of buzz. Like, you can go and speak to nationals, mid-market, account management, CD. Everybody genuinely gets on really well. Like, there's such an amazing culture because of the way we all get on. And I genuinely think we've got a fantastic product. Like, if I was to work for a company, it'd have to be because I believed in the product and believed it will fix people's problems as a business. and we can do that with confidence, and I think that really helps, because imagine if you sell us something, which I hear a lot from when I do interviews, and like, oh, why are you leaving? Oh, we had this product, but every time it went to go live, it failed. I would hate that. I wouldn't have any love in that, and that's why I think people would leave. So actually believing our product and ongoing training helps as well.
Okay. If you weren't doing software sales, you in fact you touched on it earlier, maybe with actors, what would you be doing as a job?
I'd work with horses, actually.
Really?
Not mucking out every day, though, just saying. But I obviously have been horse riding forever. I compete a lot, so I'd love to work with horses. I would literally love to do the thing that I get up every night in the evening when it's raining. I will do it. That's my passion. So yeah, probably.
So what motivates you? Obviously that's your passion, but what motivates you to sort of do software sales? What gets you up in the morning to do that?
So what gets me up in the morning is making sure that I'm for my team generally, but for me, I've just moved to the countryside. I bought a 400-year-old thatched cottage.
Nice.
Hey, didn't realise what a big commitment that was. So I'm going to have to work forever to replace a thatch in 20 years. But the quality of life change in the country for me is amazing. But bloody hell, I'm going to have to earn lots of money now, aren't I?
Yeah.
That's a motivator.
So would you say, if you were giving a bit of advice for sort of someone trying to get into the industry or into software sales, what bit of advice would you say to how to get into the market? And you approached software sales, you took a drop in role, but if they're trying to get into an entry level, like an MDR role or something like that, what advice would you give them?
Be prepared to work over and above the others. So we get MDRs that do come through forward, so to the telesales team, and they aspire to want to be, I don't know, like a marketeer, a salesperson. Know what path you want. I get that younger people don't tend to know what they want to do. Like if you'd have asked me when I was 22, I definitely wouldn't have told you I want to be in software sales. But kind of understand your path and where you want to go and work well, because I can tell you what, the hardest part of any job is the telesales bit. It's flipping difficult, like calling, and if you haven't done 50 dials, you have to do 100. But just go right every day. Do the tough things first. Eat the frog.
Yeah.
If you have to do 50 dials, break it down. Like make it so that you work your day so every day is a successful one. If you think of it as I've got to do 50 dials, imagine how you'd feel every day going into your job. But if you're like, brilliant, if I do 50 dials, this is what I'm going to get, and just work out small ways of making your rewards very small. And then what would happen is naturally you'll get your number, and then the business will start to look at you as someone that overachieves, and they'll want to interview for the next role because they see that your work ethic is the right work ethic. You're always the one to put things forward and put yourself forward. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I've got a great idea. No idea is a bad idea, right? But I love people that come to me with ideas because I can't think of all of them. Gosh.
What if someone comes to you, one of your team, and they say, they want to go into a leadership role, but you don't think they're leadership material? How do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So what I would do is, I don't know if you've heard of a thing called situational leadership. So I would then instead of looking at the individual, you have to look at the task versus the individual. And obviously the individual might be really good at other things, but there might be certain things that they need to work on. So not to say they'll never be a leader, but it might be a case for us to say, right, brilliant, let's have a look at what leadership skills are, what you need to be a good leader, and then let's have a look at how we can develop that. And it might be that it's shadow other people. We do a lot of buddy programs. So if somebody comes in new, give them the opportunity, like, right, I'm going to allow you to buddy someone. I will coach you on the coaching for the buddy, and then that way I can see what skills they probably, if they're bloody rude or anything like that, then it might be a case of read Radical Candor, kind of sometimes look at the way you deliver what you say to people. You could come across as quite rude, but probably advise them to read Radical Candor maybe, because it's all in delivery for some people. But I do think that there's no such thing as not being a leader, but being able to coach them is the right way forward.
What if they just want to be, you think they're leadership material, but they just want to do sales? Would you ever sort of guide them down a route to do leadership?
No, because I don't want to do it. It's the same as, I think it's up to them what they want to do, and I've changed the why they come to work, haven't I? So, if I suddenly say, and actually you probably earn more money doing sales, to be fair, than being a leader, and absolutely not. If that's not what they don't want to do, then I would never, ever do that.
Yeah. How would you manage someone if you've got them on a PIP, performance management?
Good old PIPs.
Yeah, and because most people, when people put them on a PIP, they always think that they're out the door, aren't they? That's
Yes.
But it should be a performance improvement plan. You actually encourage them to get better at the job. So how do you manage someone who's going on a PIP, but you want to keep them motivated to actually get off that and actually do a better at their job? Because most people are thinking, oh, I'm on a PIP, I'm going to get out the door now.
And I completely agree. I always remember when I was at Epicor, one of our HR directors spoke to me about a PIP. And basically, we were trying to manage somebody out of the business, which is actually sometimes why that happens.
Yeah.
And they were like, why are you putting them on a PIP? And I'm like, well, because we want to manage them out of the business. And she's like, that's not why you put people on a PIP. And I've always remembered that from 9, 12, 10 years ago. You are absolutely right. So it's how you frame this performance plan. So this is again down to situational leadership. You take the individual. The individual's obviously got some great skills, but it allows you to pinpoint the skills that they're failing in. So if they're really good at pipeline and you can see that they're doing all the activity, but they can't execute, guess what you would do as a leader? You used to support that. So what you'd say is you're actually doing your job that you were doing anyway, because a PIP's only based on your KPIs of your actual day-to-day role, right? So you're not catching them out. There should never be anything over and above, but it allows you to recognize those gaps. So if it is execution, brilliant. I'm going to shadow you, one-to-one you do these bits. If I can fix that, guess what? We've got you ramped up. And that's where I would see it as me helping them with the situational leadership.
When in value-based selling as well, what methods do you think are working now in 2020 in terms of actually doing new business for that? Because there's a lot of debate going on at the moment about social selling and using LinkedIn, and we talked about earlier about sending video messages or whatever it is to get threads out of new business, or what you've done when you started doing cold calling 50 dials a day, etc. So what's your view on the sort of difference now, the different methods?
Well, it's certainly changed, hasn't it, because of GDPR. I mean, I'd love to say that I think by having a smaller net. So what we've failed on in the past is having 1,200 accounts and going wide. I think actually now, because we don't have that success of being able to link, you should be LinkedIn in people, but not LinkedIn in to sell, like LinkedIn in adding value, adding good messaging. If you recognize that, they're always looking at tax things, invite them to a tax event. We partner with thousands of VAT businesses that would add value to their business and then become the consultant. I think you have to lead with value in consultancy nowadays. There's none of this cowboy selling now, is there? You just can't do it. And interestingly, a really good example is one of my new guys. Obviously, he has KPIs that he has to fix. So he rang up a closing at one from 2 years ago. They've already gone out to market and have got 2 of our competitors coming in next week. Why didn't they come back to us? But I mean, it happened to be that we rang at the right time on the right day. Otherwise, we'd have gone in 3 weeks later, and they're like, "Yeah, cool, we've already gone with someone else." But they didn't come back to us. So it's really hard to know what we're doing wrong. There's so many more competitors out there now. Anyway, you have to be that one better. So I think the consultative sell and the consultative approach is way forward. I mean, look how you've approached me. I'm obviously joking.
But it's funny because the methods that I'm using now, we're doing a lot of social selling. We don't really do cold calling anymore because I think people just don't want to be cold called. No. What you're calling me up? Why are you ringing me? It's sort of like, it's annoying. So it's the messaging has got to be right, and you've got to provide value. Yeah. I totally agree. A very left field question here: women in tech.
Yeah, my favourite subject.
So 16.8% are in tech, women in tech. Why aren't enough females coming into our industry, or what puts them off?
Do you know what? If I could answer that, I think I mentioned it to you before. Me and my 2 other directors within our team, in the last 8 months, we've interviewed over 100 people. We haven't had one women's CV in. However,
madness, isn't it?
Having said that, our small business team have a good array of women. Our nationals team have a good array of women, and our kind of account management client dev, but I don't get it. Where are they? I don't know. I honestly, I kind of think I do know if I was to look at it from me. And if I could summarize it to the way I look at the way I behave, if I look at a role and I see 5 things on this particular job description, I'll pick out the 2 things I can't do, so I won't go for it. Now, I know for a fact that the guys would look at the 3 and be like, yeah, I can do them, I'm going to go for the role. Where if we worry too much, we're typical, very analytical, not as in analytical, we the way that we are is, I think, programmed ridiculously annoyingly, because I'm the same. But the other thing, I spoke to our recruitment director, and he was like, sometimes a woman will go for a job and we need to speak to her 4 times, where a guy will only speak to him once and they'll go for the job. So element
do you think
of
there's
doubt.
anything we can do to encourage it? More females to sort of apply for jobs?
I wish they would, because it's not this whole boys club anymore. It
No.
really isn't. I mean, I joke about it. I literally work with only just 1.5. We've got a new girl that started from small business, so she's moved over. So we've got 2 of us and a me in mid-market. They talk about football all the time. It's so boring, but they're really good guys. They're not like, like this. That isn't there anymore. And I know.
Do you think that culture put females coming into?
Yeah. So I put a LinkedIn post ages ago when I was recruiting before, and loads of women actually PM'd me and said that they felt that it was a bit of a boys' club, and when they were going to some businesses and some organisations, the interviewers were coming across quite aggressive, quite bullish, like it's all about numbers. I agree the end result is about numbers, but it isn't about numbers, because if you've got the right people in place, of course the numbers fall naturally, right? So I think maybe interviewing techniques is still, I mean, how many people have had retraining on interview techniques recently?
Yeah.
For a start, like, and actually, like, I would love to see more women's CV, and I probably interview them just for you know what, if they were brilliant, personal, I can train them if they've got the bits I mentioned before, because actually nobody knows about anything when you go in and start anything, right? If I go and join a new business tomorrow, I'm not going to know how to sell it. So that bit's trainable, and the transferable skills are the things that I just wish that they'd come forward more.
Do you think the culture, when, like you said, like, boys' club or whatever it was in tech, and it has been over the years, there's no doubt about it, especially in VARs and not so much vendors, but especially in the VAR community. Do you think that culture has put females coming?
Yeah.
Literally put them off coming in.
Just from what people have said to me, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm on the tech LinkedIn forum as well, and it's really interesting. But we also have to get away from this flipping gender thing, right? Like, I mean, I'm like, we haven't had any women in, but I think if we can just move away from whether you're a man or a woman a little bit more, like, it would be great, because we're all just people. Yeah. And actually, like, if you can do a great job, I mean, I've seen some fantastic women, but I've also got some fantastic guys that work for us. But I wish that there was, like, I wish everybody would come forward and then not worry. But I think we worry too much. It's typical the way we're.
When we did it's sort of about moving away from gender. When we did our gender diversity white paper, there was some really frightening stats in there, really, that I'm not sure exactly the percentage, but there was that women feel it harder to get promoted over men.
I agree.
Why would you say it? Why is that?
I think I'm a proper living example of that. So there's myself and a colleague that works in our enterprise. I think I mentioned it to you earlier. We have leadership roundtables. Now we have quite a lot of women from when we were 8 years ago. But she's like, yeah, but it took us way longer than the guys to get promoted. And actually, it was only
why is that, do you think?
Who knows? Because maybe we're not ballsy enough to ask the question early. Maybe we don't say, oh, can I have a pay rise? Can I get promoted? I think there was actually a stat about women asking for pay rises versus men. And I think it was ridiculously low, and how we wouldn't ask for a pay rise yet. We're just as valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah. I know I hold myself back. I know I do. I mean, I should put myself forward for stuff, and then if somebody says, oh, maybe not, then the doubt's in my mind already, and that's a seed planted. Which is annoying, because actually I have been really successful. I am good, and I bet there's a lot of women out there that feel the same and should just actually sod it. For 2020, take the plunge and apply for it.
Do you know what, as well? One of the frightening stats in there as well was, I think it was something like 75% of women, if they go into a meeting, they feel they're not being taken seriously as a female because they're selling tech.
See, I can't comment on that, because I've sold tech and I've been very successful. As you know, I've got to club every year. And we predominantly finances women and men. So there's never it's a very heavy male, we don't sell into IT really in the industry we're in. So there is a very woman and man. And I actually think that the women come across quite hard. I think sometimes the women can be quite harsh to the other males and females that come to present to them. So I don't think that's true. Yeah. Obviously, I might be the 25% of that 70%, so I'm okay with the minority there. But just from my own experience, I mean, I think 1 year I sold the highest still for units, 27 brand new names. I don't think I wasn't taken seriously, and I competitively beat in all of them. So yeah, I don't know whether that's because they were rubbish salespeople, maybe.
Yeah, they can't sell.
It could be that.
Oh dear. So my last question for you if you were going to give one bit of advice to someone, either as a contributor, and you've done both roles, or a sales leader, to really make a name for himself in the industry, what would it be?
Think about the way you work with people, and the way, I use radical candor a lot because actually it's one thing that my VP says I do very well. I have an art of being able to deliver a message but without it coming across as rude and aggressive. It's really important that there's a certain individuals within our business I certainly wouldn't deliver that way. So being able to understand who you're talking to, how you're talking to them, and what messaging will get you a stead, because what you need is a brand. Now, if you can build your own personal brand in the right way by not being an arrogant person, then that brand will go a long way. So if, for example, I want to move up within the business or over the business, I've got people that are going to back me.
Yeah.
So that's
Sponsors.
what I would say. Yeah, brand yourself well. Don't go and get drunk. Do it in your own time. Go and be aggressive in your own time. Take it out on the football pitch, but think about your brand, how people look up to you. If you was in a room and you could hear people talking about you and they didn't know you were there, want them to say only nice things about you, because that is what is really important to everybody's success. Nobody wants to be that arrogant, aggressive person. So I think personal brand, regardless of which role you take, is important.
Great. Georgie, you've been a great guest. Thanks for your time. Cheers. Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.